Monopolies don't last. 1904, Rockefeller Standard Oil controls 91% of the US oil market. 2004, Standard Oil is just something that we read about in the history books. 2000, GE becomes the world's largest company. 2021, GE announces that they'll be divesting into 3 different companies. 2007, Nokia is synonymous with cell phones. 2023, Nokia is the legacy company that's iconic for its ringtone. 2015, Apple, Google, Amazon, and Meta rule the world. But 2045, 2060, when is their expiration? These companies may seem unstoppable, unbreakable today, but there's only one thing for certain. Each and every one of these companies will fail. In fact, the bigger they get, the faster they'll fall. You're probably asking how. I mean, no one's ever gonna stop using smartphones or the internet, right? Well, that's just because we don't yet know what's next. Henry Ford once famously said, "If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." Today, horse-drawn carriages are virtually obsolete. So here's why all monopolies are doomed to fail and why big tech has already started their demise. People love to hate on monopolies, but they often forget that it wasn't that long ago that the very same companies were cherished. You see, companies don't just randomly become monopolies because they had better marketing or something. Companies become monopolies because they offered something that was undeniably better than everything else. Standard Oil offered an undeniably better way for energy production and transportation. AT&T offered an undeniably better way to communicate. And modern tech companies started off by offering an undeniably better way to navigate the internet. Amazon mastered online shopping, Apple mastered handheld devices, Google mastered advertising, and Facebook mastered online communication. So, ironically, the first stage of a monopoly is actually love. All monopolies were loved by most of its user base at some point in time. That's how they became a monopoly. But this love also gives companies a lot of control, allowing them to do things that normal companies wouldn't be able to get away with. Apple, for example, was able to drop the headphone jack, prevent consumers from repairing their devices, and even remove the power brick. Yet, they're still the biggest company in the world because people love iPhones. Such anti-consumer moves are usually what raise the first red flags that a given company is actually just a monopoly. But by this point, the company already has control over the market and they shift their focus to building an empire. During this stage, companies can basically throw out anything they want and it'll stick. Likely the best example of this was Microsoft back in the 90s and 2000s. Windows and Office were actually phenomenal products that people loved. Internet Explorer, on the other hand, was not. But that didn't matter because Microsoft was able to push IE using Windows. The same thing could be said about Hotmail, Outlook, and the MSN suite of products. The same thing can also be said about Google and Apple throughout the 2010s. People started using Google Drive because they already had Gmail accounts. People started using Google Photos because they were already using Android. Similarly, with Apple, people started using iCloud, Apple Music, Safari, and Apple Maps because it came along with iPhones. This isn't to say that these products were bad, but they weren't especially stellar either. I mean, let's just be honest, who's gonna use Apple Maps or Safari or the Apple Mail client if it wasn't for iPhones? The answer is no one, and this is really the trademark of an aged monopoly. People used their newest products not because they were extraordinary, but because they were associated with something that was extraordinary. Piggybacking mediocre products off of extraordinary products only works for so long though. The beginning of the end for most monopolies is actually just themselves. As monopolies grow more powerful, we start to see a clear disconnect between the company's original purpose and vision and the goals and visions of the company's employees. I mean, just think about it. What type of person joins a monopoly? Well, it's usually someone with the mindset of, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. And I don't blame these people whatsoever. They're simply looking out for themselves as they should be. But this doesn't exactly play out well for the organization. Suddenly, the primary goal of the average employee is no longer to serve the customer in the best way possible. In fact, the average employee might not even know how their role impacts the customer, as there's simply so many layers between them and the final product. So, the primary goal of employees transitions to impressing their managers, getting promotions, and scoring bonuses. This is how it becomes across the entire corporate ladder, and as for the top, well, the top isn't any better. Most of the visionary executives have likely already retired, moved on to something else, or have just passed away. So the people who are left aren't visionaries, they're the ones who were able to play the corporate game the best. They were able to handle office politics and backstabbing and crappy managers and ineffective teams and whatever else. These people aren't exactly leaders. A better description would be survivors, similar to winning the Hunger Games or something. And given that this is what they've been used to their entire career, as executives, they're gonna focus on survival. How do they survive at the top? Well, it's not by serving the customers, it's by serving the shareholders. The top two things that shareholders are looking for is growth and profit, and thus the priorities of the company also becomes growth and profit. What's the easiest way to do this? Well, the easiest ways are to cut costs and increase prices. A perfect example of this is Google. With Larry Page and Sergey Brin at the helm, the focus of the company was to push the boundaries and experiment. In fact, Google was always super proud of all their failures, of which they had hundreds. Their philosophy was always, you're gonna have a bunch of failures if you want to succeed. But I'm not sure if we can say the same thing about Sundar's Google. Over the past several months itself, Google has been pulling back on moonshot ideas substantially. In fact, in some areas, they've canceled as many as half of their projects. It's easy to say that they're pulling back because of the recession, but it's not like Google or Facebook or really any big tech company that's doing layoffs are actually at risk. They're not even remotely close to being unprofitable. For giants, recessions are simply a time to maximize efficiency so that they can become even more profitable for the next bull run. But by the time the desire to maximize short-term profits becomes larger than the desire to create a long-term change, the end is already near. Monopoly is really quite a fitting name for these companies because most modern monopolies are dependent on just one product. It might seem like they're everywhere with hundreds of products and services, but really, the base of the company can usually be traced back to just one product. To this day, Google search accounts for over 50% of all of Google's revenue. iPhones account for over 50% of all of Apple's revenue. AWS is the only reason Amazon is even profitable. And the entire business of Meta can be summed up by Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. The only tech giant that breaks this trend is Microsoft. They've become more of a tech holding company than an actual business, which seems to be working out great so far, but we'll have to see how it plays out over the long term. As for everyone else though, their empires are actually extremely fragile. The reality is that while they may have hundreds of microservices that generate a bunch of revenue, the only reason that any of these services are successful is because of the base product. iCloud, for example, has nearly 1 billion users, but how many people would stick around after the iPhone is disrupted? Similarly, how many people would even know about the metaverse if it wasn't for Facebook? The harsh reality is that the only reason these extensions are successful or even relevant is because of the success of the original product. Once that fades away, so does the entire company. This isn't to say that the company goes bankrupt the day after or something. Rather, they become a shell of their former self, similar to IBM or AT&T or GE. They might be everywhere, but at the same time, they're nowhere because the brand no longer carries the same weight. Take ChatGPT for example. Let's say ChatGPT replaces Google Search, which it might very well do. As the masses flock over to ChatGPT, people will naturally start using the products that are associated with ChatGPT versus the products that are associated with Google. Given that Microsoft is a major investor in ChatGPT, this means that a lot more people will start using Edge, Bing, Outlook, OneDrive, and Microsoft Office. All of a sudden, Google's major product categories of Chrome, Gmail, Google Drive, and Google Office aren't nearly as popular despite nothing changing about them. The bottom line is that the hero product changed, and with that, all of the auxiliary products also changed. So most of these big tech companies aren't as invincible as they may seem. While they may have hundreds or even thousands of popular services, it's only a handful of products that really drive people to the ecosystem. Once those products fall out of favor, so does the entire company. Looking at FAANG today, it's clear that they're well past stage 1 of being a monopoly. The days of people loving them were 15 to 20 years ago. Nowadays, the sentiment that dominates for FAANG is actually concerns. Concerns about their power and influence, concerns about privacy, concerns about anti-consumer behavior. These guys are also well past stage 2. They've already leveraged their market share to push other products and services and to become omnipresent. Their focus is no longer to improve the world, but to maximize stock growth. This is why they spend so much money on stock buybacks. Apple, for example, has spent $573 billion on buybacks over the past 10 years. I've said this before, but that's literally enough money to buy out another Fortune 10 company. Such behavior is only evident in a late-stage company. If this was 2007, Apple would have been way too busy with scaling manufacturing, logistics, and R&D to be spending $500 billion on buybacks. But all of this brings up the question, how much time do these companies have left? Well, for that, we can just take it from the horse's mouth itself, Jeff Bezos.
Short lifespans, Charlie, and Amazon will be disrupted one day.
And you worry about that?
I don't worry about it because I know it's inevitable. Companies come and go. And the companies that are the shiniest and most important of any era, you wait a few decades and they're gone.
And your job is to make sure that you delay that date.
I would love for it to be after I'm dead.
Hearing that and looking around, big tech companies are rapidly approaching this milestone. Amazon is 29 years old, Google is 25 years old, and Facebook is 19 years old. Now, Apple is 47 years old, but they were completely reinvented with the iPod and iPhone, so the modern Apple is more like 20 years old. So it's likely that the utter dominance of these companies is already behind us. In fact, the peak was probably the pandemic. Again, this isn't to say that these companies will go bankrupt tomorrow. But what this does mean is that they've already started the transition into becoming the Ciscos and Intels of the world. And once they spend a good amount of time there, they'll become the Xeroxes and Kodaks of the world, and that is the inevitable future of FAANG. Clearly, things aren't looking too great for big tech, but likely the one exception is Microsoft. If you're wondering why, check out this video, but until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.